Hi, my name's Bruce McNeill. I want to start by thanking David Doherty for giving me the opportunity to speak to you at HorseTech Conference 2024. Give you a little background about me. After high school, I went to work for a company called William Prim in Dayville, Connecticut. They were a manufacturer of straight pins, safety pins, notion pins, things like that. And I went to work in their coal heading department, learning how to make straight pins. So basically, you took wire and you put a head on it, cut it off, and it transferred down, and you ground a point on it, and they would sell it mostly to the notion industry and clothing industry. New shirts and everything came with pins in it. And we learned our skills basically from the old guy that had run it before. I mean, Prim was a German owned company and they'd been around since probably the 1500s or so. The technology at that point in 1978 was, you learn to listen and look for different things, and you'd hear sounds in the machine and know that, something wasn't right, or you'd do visual inspection of the products. 1981, I transferred into their electronics division where uh, we were basically making the same thing, the same type of pins, but they were smaller and they were for the, whether it be for circuits or for, whatever they could think of to use a pin in that kind of industry. But one of the things that we added in the process was statistical process control. So we would measure the product afterwards and after it was manufactured and chart it to so that we could try to predict failure as it came along. It was effective, but again, you had to have a failed part in order to find it, or you could slowly measure and see that the tooling was expanding or whatever and changing the shape of the pin that you wanted for the finished product, but you really couldn't control the process. By the mid 80s, we started adding like proximity sensors and different things that would tell us if perhaps like the wire had come loose out of the machine or some of the product had caused failure within the tooling. But it really, again, all the process was controlled by micrometer measurements of the different pins or whatever we were producing. And at that time, we had added like different wire forms. A simple one might be a paper clip or whatever, but I mean, they were a little more complex than that. Um, so by the mid 90s, we began to figure out that we could embed the sensors within the tooling and start to measure the pressure that was on the tooling. So we would know if, for example, a tool during a part of the manufacturer had broken or was no longer in place, the sensor might say, "Hey, there's no more pressure on this tool. Something broke," and it would shut the machine off and at least save us, having failed product. So that was the mid '90s. By late in the '90s, we started to get more involved because computers were a lot faster then, so we could use some type of development changes so that the embedded tooling was now feeding the computers the information about the stress that's being put on each tool. And during that time, um, we could start to predict when things would fail. We could look at a signature and it would be going along like this, and we'd see spikes and say, okay, so at this point, right before it changed, there were things that we could do or shut down the machine that would avoid, making product that was bad. But one of the things we learned was garbage in, garbage out. You couldn't rely on the fact that um, the sensors could pick up subtle changes that would allow your product to drift out of control. And of course, you're still using statistical analysis, so you've got to keep your product well within a certain balance. And these were products being made for medical and military and things like that. So the tolerances were pretty tight, and we were able to achieved quite a bit. And I look at it this way, going from 1978, where the machine was basically tuned by ear, to being able to monitor and look for a signature within the computer that would tell you that you were about to have failure. So I think that's something that David's trying to achieve and bring to the market when looking at horses? Is it possible to monitor them so that we can predict when failure is going to happen, not just wait for it? So by 2003, I left manufacturing and was uh, had my own uh, farm boarding facility for horses, and um, offering trail rides and lessons for children and things like that. And I had a Halflinger pony and 15 acres of lush green grass. And so you can imagine the nightmares that I had. Um, there wasn't an understanding like I have now of, diet and how diet can affect laminitis and insulin resistant horses. So I was having trouble keeping this horse sound. Working with my vet, she said, well, maybe, you should learn to trim yourself and study this and get a better understanding of what's happening here. You seem to have the mechanical aptitude. Why not try to apply that into hoofs? So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. So she helped me a little bit to understand the hoof, and I studied in clinic with anybody I could find online. I mean, I was all over YouTube and um, questioning people that were shoeing or doing barefoot trims as to, what are you looking for in this angle, or why do you want the hoof to um, why are you pulling back the toe, and those sorts of things. And I wasn't getting anywhere. I couldn't keep this horse down, and I had several others that were under my care that the toes were blowing out, or we had high-low heel syndrome, or different things like that. So I needed to get a better understanding of what was going on. And I had the ability from manufacturing to know that I can do statistical analysis on this. I can say, um, record what the diet was, what the exercise was, what changes I made to the hoof, and how it affected soundness. And, I could do my own videos and study them, and try to get a better understanding of how the hoof was growing. Not so much how I could cookie cut it into a certain shape, but how's it growing, and what's growing, and how's that affecting soundness. And so it gave me a pretty good idea of at least what was happening. I think a lot of farriers get tricked out because they're there every 6 weeks and they've got to rely on an owner who's saying, um, the horse was turned out all the time, or it exercised 5 times a week. And then you find out later on the horse spent 24/7 in a stall since you saw it last time, and you were the last person to pick up the hoof. So, I had some of those experiences on the road, and it's why I said I need to take this study group and focus it. So by probably 2015 or so, I had a pretty basic trimming skills. I had apprenticed with a few farriers. I had gone to clinics, so I kind of knew how to handle the tools and how to get the results that I needed in the hoof. So I did this documented study. I had 6 horses. I had the 2 thoroughbreds, 2 quarter horses, or 3/4 horses, in the Halflinger pony, and I could see the difference in the breed and how the different work would affect hoof growth, and what was healthy hoof growth, and you know what needed to be shared. Kind of what I learned over that time was that there is no "it shall be like this," except probably that the bar should never overgrow the live sole in the back third of the foot. Other than that, anything's going depending on what's happening. So for somebody to come out and try to cookie cut and measure this and measure that, they're never going to have success. I mean, they may be able to control it, but they're not going to be able to reverse some of these hoof deformities that happen um, without. So by late 2020, COVID hits and life goes crazy for me, and you know, I needed uh, I needed to figure out why I was chasing certain things within the hoof. Long toe all the time, long toe, and I started looking around at different disciplines within the horse industry, and of course, racing. They want a cookie cut foot. There's no doubt about it. get me talking about Flightline, you'll hear what I think about what they're doing to that industry. And I don't think they're making it better because the fastest horse in the world is still the wild horse where no man is touching the hoof. So, but I wanted to figure out how to balance the horse, how to make all four strides equal, so the two hoofs want to grow together, want to be the same length. And I found that dressage is about the best there is to try to get that balanced horse, that equal, whether it's turning left or right. And so I looked around, and I was willing to relocate from Connecticut, and I found JP Giacomini. Or I think we kind of found each other because I had advertised on Yard Groom, um, to do barefoot hoof work because I was trying to get into a barn where I could just work with their 20 or 30, 40 horses and not have to, number one, travel on the road, but number two, get a better control over. uh, I did I made this cut on the bar, and I know it's going to result in this kind of change within the hoof over time, and I could watch it day in, day out, and learn from that. But the other thing more important that I needed is I needed someone who understood the body. How can we lengthen that stride? Where is the pain in the body that's causing whatever problem I'm seeing in the hoof? And how can that be unlocked? And that was one of the things I was mesmerized when I watched JP and his head trainer, Cedar Potts Warner, work with these horses and change these things that I mean, I had been using, I call it barefoot movement therapy at the time, before in the late 2020s, where I would throw the horse off the hill on a lunge line. And he'd have to accept the lengthened stride or fall flat on his face. And I mean, while that may work good to change their body, it's not working very well in their mind. And, I'm getting horses that are a little bit nuts where, you want them more relaxed. So they could achieve these things with whatever rig they were using on the lunge line. JP's developed a halter that pulls the horse forward by the bottom of the throat, and it makes a difference rather than shanking your horse. And I think I can show some pictures of it at the end of the video to show you how effective just that simple change was. Or he's developed a martingale that'll help make the hands a little more supple and ask the horse correctly off the bit how to move. And so that's worked really well. And in dressage, they're adding the Equiflow neck rope is what they call it, where rather than a two-bit system, you're using a rope on the neck to set posture, and then a lighter snaffle bit to get control. So the whole objective is to reduce pain, and when you reduce pain and you don't have tight muscles, the horse is able to move more free. And if you think about in racing, the freer the horse, the faster the horse is going to be. I believe horses should never need hoof protection. I found during my professional career that while that statement is true, most owners do not have the training and resources to succeed. I strongly recommend that regardless of lifestyle or discipline, horses never be shod before the age of 3. And there's a reason for that. Every horse is born with an adult hoof deformity in that the hoof is rolled up with foal feathers to protect the mother during birth. This hoof creates an unnatural but faster footfall because the horse is light enough it can lock the fetlock joint and come up on the toes, impact phase on the toes, and striding right through. As the horse ages and gains weight, the hoof must be allowed to unroll and the horse transition into the footfall of an adult, heel first, landing, rolling on through. This process with average movement takes years to complete in the wild. These first years of life are critical for the horse to change the hoof, stretch soft tissue, develop bone density, and establish and reestablish muscle memory for movement. The horse evolved over millions of years with constant movement. Their hoofs are smart structures, meaning that they are continuously growing and adapting to changes in the terrain and lifestyle. When we domesticate the horse or control, restrict movement, we alter what evolution has created. The horse just can't slow down its growth rate enough. Most recognize overgrowth on the hoof at the toe, but methods for correcting this do not prevent reoccurrence, putting the horse into a continuous cycle of overgrowth and correction. The objective of barefoot movement is to make the hoofs as self maintaining as possible for the current lifestyle and job of our horses. For most wild horses, hoof care is simple, just keep moving. Where it gets complicated is when we restrict movement or try to protect the hoof rather than condition it for concussion. It can only get more complicated when we try to prevent wear or overprotect the internal structures or lock the hoof into the current situation to please a riding discipline. All hoofs must be conditioned for the job we expect the horses to perform. Knowing how the basic hoof structures relay signals to the horse's brain will help us when conditioning a hoof for a new job or terrain. Any changes we make to the hoof should improve the conformation, lengthen or strengthen the stride, and increase overall performance. Pretty simple. Recently, I attended the Keeneland yearling sales for books 4 through 6 and was disappointed at the hoof lameness I saw caused by hoof protection. Now, we all know I've worked with yearlings. I mean, that yearling is dancing all around. There's no way that you can accurately shoe and drive nails and try to get the right shape that you're looking for. So, I feel for those guys, and I don't mean to point fingers, but thoroughbred racing has a unique opportunity to change the way the world views hoof protection. And I think all it'll take is one horse to succeed barefoot, and the rest will follow. I'm telling you, the fastest horse in the world is still the wild horse. And there's a reason for that. And it's not the babies or the 3-year-olds or the 4-year-olds. I mean, they're 14, 15, 16 years old before they reach prime. So we're missing something in the racing industry. And I think we can put together changes that'll. So we need to start challenging ourselves. I mean, in the thoroughbred industry or dressage or even some of the eventing horses, there just isn't the opportunity to get the turnout that would help the horse relax. A horse should be grazing with its head down, moving around slowly. That's when they heal. That's when they um, are probably the most comfortable. Some horses, whether they be insulin resistant or whatever, can't be out grazing. But there are some simple changes that we can make. I mean, one of the things that gets me about thoroughbred racing is that you take your hay bag and you hang it up outside the stall, and the horse is hanging around with its head trying to eat, and it's like, what are you doing? The backache and pains and neck, and you just, I mean, just a simple change. Throw the hay bag on the ground. It's just such an improvement. So, in closing, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this video, and hoping that you learned a little something about hoofs, remembering that it's not what we remove from the hoof, but what we leave that allows the hoof to balance into a cycle of not requiring that continuous correction of overgrowth. And one of the things we want to achieve here at Barefoot Movement is to change the perception of owners and trainers. And your groom isn't just someone to bathe the horse and shovel the manure out of the stall, but he could be somebody to take care of those hoofs. So he's familiar enough with the body and he understands where there might be pain, and then he's able to go from that to the next step, which is to look at the hoof and make minor corrections. He may not be your full-time therapeutic farrier, but he can take a rasp and file a little extra toe off. uh, to be honest, I think if a horse is in full training on a racetrack, you're not going to have to touch those hoofs. They're going to be self-maintaining if you've got a good exercise program. The only thing you may have to add to your program is some way to balance the horse. You can't just keep it in a left turn all day. I know watching the Kentucky Derby year or so back, people were amazed that the Japanese were running their horses in uh, counterclockwise circles and clockwise circles and doing things that they thought was only, you know, supposed to be done by the dressage world, but they're finding some balance. And if we're not careful here in the U.S., they're going to run right by us. So I think barefoot is the next challenge, and I invite you, if you're ever in Kentucky, that you look me up here in Versailles. I've got my contact information at the end of the video, and that we get together maybe over at Keeneland and talk about how you can make your hoof a little better. You know, I think barefoot is a solution, but maybe you will too when I point out the deformities that your horses have and how that's affecting their performance. So again, thank you, and look forward to meeting you in the future.